welcome to Hypermobile Yogi's online summit. We are very excited and happy to be with Sarah Parker Physio today, who's going to be talking to us about the pelvic floor, pelvic health, pregnancy, all things related to your nether regions, things that we don't often talk about, but actually are so important because everyone's experiencing issues with this. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
This is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you probably don't know that I live with Celest, or you may have seen me on her Instagram story. So that's how this has come about. So we're here in our kitchen talking about mainly fanny. Although men do have a pelvic floor as well, so we can't cancel them out, but my experience is more with the female parts. We just have one extra hole, and babies come out of there, so the risks of having dysfunctions are higher for females because we have to push a melon through a keyhole. But yeah, so topics wanting to cover today was how it kind of links with hypermobility.
Yeah, a bit. We were just kind of curious if
Because I guess that's the thing here, isn't it?
Sort of, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, have you got anything any insights maybe into hypermobility in the pelvic floor?
Yeah.
Or is,
So, should we start with the complete basics of how the pelvic floor works?
Yeah,
I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, so, if you think of the pelvis as a bucket...
Shall I get the skeleton?
Oh, do you have a pelvis?
Sorry, guys, I'm just,
The pelvis as a bucket, and the bottom is your pelvic floor, and all of your organs, bladder, in women, vagina and uterus, and bowels are kind of front to back in that order inside this bucket. And without the pelvic floor, everything would just fall out the bottom, like my hand is doing here. So the muscles just help to keep everything in situ. And they also stop you from peeing and pooping and farting when you don't need to. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they go all the way from the tailbone and then to the front, the pubic bone, which you can kind of feel on yourself down between your legs, and they spread wide to the bottom of the pelvis there as well, and they're connected to the connective tissue of some of the muscles of the hip bone as well. Obturator internus is the muscle, but as I think the girls have probably said over and over again, the body isn't just one component, it's completely linked, mainly by myofascia. And this myofascia goes all the way from the pelvic floor up the abdomen and around to the back to the diaphragm. So this whole kind of barrel is connected and is really, really important for good functioning. So you're thinking diaphragm, breathing, and the contents of your abdomen with the pressure. And it all has to move in synchronicity for it to work properly. Cool. And when there's dysfunctions there, things are gonna, go wrong. And we need to find out what those dysfunctions are. And I've had a look at the research, and in terms of dysfunctions, the hypermobility side of things, you are generally more lax and less switched on. And in terms of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, it's kind of like a swap of pressure between the chest and the abdominal cavity. So the pelvic floor and the diaphragm moves in this sort of way when you're breathing. Okay. So it's really, really important. Basics, get your breathing right.
Okay. And is there any kind of thing with hypermobile people? Do they have like funny breathing or funny pelvic floors? Or is there anything you've picked up on or in the research?
Well, rib flare is one thing, and I think that's the thing that you kind of struggle with. Have you rib flared? I'm hypermobile, by the way, as well. So yeah, go team. And rib flare is a huge thing because yeah, I was the same, and it wasn't until I started doing Pilates and I was really aware of closing ribs,
But what does that mean?
what does rib flare
What does
mean?
rib flare mean?
Well, it means that, I mean, your diaphragm's connected to your ribs, and also your transverse abs are connected to your ribs. Your abs, big abs, are connected to the bottom of your ribs. So if your ribs are flaring out, things are at a full stretch,
Okay.
and so they're not engaging properly.
And
And so it can have a knock-on effect.
okay, and because of that fascial chain that Sarah was talking about, how everything is linked, it's not just we zooming into one part and that one part does all the work. Because of the chain, obviously, if one part of the chain isn't working, it'll have an effect on the other part of the chain.
Yeah, well, I mean, what did we find this morning, Celeste, with your pelvic floor?
So Sarah, for the very first time, assessed my pelvic floor, which I
Yeah.
know sounds weird for a lot of people, but Sarah's a pelvic health physio, much like a gynecologist would be, and she assessed the different parts of my pelvic floor and exactly how it feels and how it works. And we found that one side was strong and good, and the other side was a bit weaker and had a trigger point.
Yeah, and that kind of goes in line with how you find your crossbody oblique sling.
Yeah, so I'm very weak in this sling, which is why this rib flares more.
And your weakness or less strong side was her left side.
Yeah.
So,
And when I engage everything and bring it back,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, that feels more normal, but it's hard work for me to stay in that normal place because my body wants to drift and do weird things.
And it's actually not surprising that you'll have a trigger point there. So, because the muscle would really try to hold on because of the weakness and get a little trigger point in there. So I've just given her some techniques to self-massage and get rid of that trigger point. And that might be the key to switching everything back on again, because we're releasing that fascia.
So can you just explain a little bit more about, well, going back a few minutes, you said about breathing correctly. What would correct breathing be? And also like this self-massage, like, because I'm sure people are wondering, like, wait, what do I need to do then?
Yeah. So breathing technique, I usually teach anybody that's got a pelvic floor dysfunction to engage as you exhale. So on the inhale, you're letting everything fall out. Inhale and release. So let me undo my pants so I can let everything release. Inhaling here, because if you think about it, your diaphragm is pushing down. So if you're holding your tummy in, you're not going to
There's
get
too much pressure.
Absolutely. And you don't want that pressure to be bearing down on your pelvic floor.
Okay.
So you're inhaling, letting everything go, filling all the way up, letting your chest rise. As you exhale, you're drawing in your pelvic floor back to front, pulling up lower, mid, upper abs and pushing that air out. So as your pelvic floor contracts, it helps to release the air. So you're engaging, and it's just bringing that consciousness to your body as you breathe.
Cool.
And filling up.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how I start my yoga practice every morning with this type of breathing, but I didn't know I was.
Yeah, so a really
doing that.
nice way to,
I just know it felt good.
with your yoga and with your teaching, to bring the pelvic floor into it, is to connect it to the breathing. And you already do your breathing practices at the start of yoga.
But the thing is, we are a little bit given some funny information, because I think sometimes in yoga we are taught about something called the Mula Bandha, which is your pelvic floor, and in a lot of practices we are taught to really lift the pelvic floor all the time.
No, don't do that, because your pelvic you need to train your pelvic floor. Imagine you go to the gym and you're doing your bicep curls. You don't walk around with your arms flexed all day.
Some people do that, but they're just
and the pelvic floor is no different to that. It's a muscle. So you're going to give it some love and exercise it like you would if you want to get big biceps. I mean, not that it's going to grow and start protruding out. Have you been doing your exercises? Can't you tell? Look at my massive pelvic floor. No, it's not going to do that, but it will strengthen it. And you give it some love. Do your, we say 3 sets of 10 squeezes and fully letting go. and then 3 sets of 10-second holds. But in between, you must fully let go, because relaxing is a really, really, really important part. And as you were saying with the self-release, don't go in and start massaging your pelvic floor. That's something that needs to be assessed. So if there is trigger points in there or hyperactivity of the pelvic floor, there's lots of things that you can do to release it, like self-massage. And it is just a case of getting your thumb in on one side and then having a massage. So this is what I taught our Celeste for her trigger point, is just to massage through, and you can feel it. It will feel different from the other side. But I would say that's something that you need to have assessed first before you go in there and start massaging your vagina. And then I went off on a tangent.
No, because I think a lot of people
relaxing.
Yeah.
Yes. So with the Mula Bandha.
Exactly.
Don't just hold on, because what can happen is then you get hyperactivity of the pelvic floor, and then that leads to problems, the same problems as if you didn't have strength in the pelvic floor, because it's already active. It can't squeeze anymore. So if you cough, jump, sneeze, it can't squeeze anymore, and so that's when you have leaking.
If you want to be totally in control of a muscle, you have to be able to switch it on and switch it off.
Wow.
So good. You have to. You absolutely have to. And the pelvic floor is one of the ones that gets completely forgotten with that. Like, you wouldn't walk around completely tensed all the time. You'd let your body do what it needs to do when it needs to do it, but do strengthening and conditioning to make sure it can withstand whatever you throw at it. Like, if you're going to go for a run, you're already strong. Like, I know you've done some stuff on the feet, making sure that everything can withstand the things that you're about to throw at it. And the pelvic floor is no different. So moving forward to pregnancy, if you know your pelvic floor really, really well, you'll be able to control that kind of second stage where you're pushing and relaxing, letting the baby come down the vagina. Yeah, otherwise...
As you're giving birth, you should be thinking, I'm now relaxing, I'm now pushing, I'm now relaxing.
So if you do your pelvic floor exercises, you'll know your pelvis so well, and you'll be able to control that descent. I've been looking at the research with hypermobility and second stage. The research says that you're higher... more likely to have spontaneous vaginal births, which is fantastic, than someone that doesn't have hypermobility.
What does that mean? Sorry.
So it's just a normal vaginal birth.
Okay.
Yeah, we had quite a few messages from people saying that when it came to giving birth, it was so easy. The baby just kind of plopped out.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits to being hypermobile.
Exactly. And also, I don't know what the research is, but my thinking is that if you are hypermobile, your collagen is stretching, you might be less likely to tear. Although, if you're hypermobile, you might
have some areas of hypertonicity.
Yes.
Hypertonic just means a muscle that's holding on
because it's weak.
And also we have areas that want to try and protect us from our hypermobility.
And so what could happen then if you do have a fast second stage, baby comes out too quick, and that's when you tear. But I don't know what that would be something really interesting to research.
I think that really just reinforces to anyone who does want to be pregnant or maybe is in pregnancy, the importance of getting your pelvic floor assessed before you go into labour by a pelvic health physio.
Yeah, or even before, but anytime, get your pelvic floor checked just to make sure you're doing everything right, everything's working the way it should work, that when you squeeze when you cough, your pelvic floor's engaging, as is your transverse abdominal muscle, and then at any time, this is obviously more for females, you do want to get pregnant, you're aware of your pelvic floor. We should be exercising our pelvic floor every day. If you've had any dysfunctions, 3 times a day, and then once the dysfunction's clear, every day until we die.
So I don't consciously do pelvic floor exercises.
Yeah.
What I do is, I guess, I try and have good posture. And I feel like when I'm in good posture, my pelvic
everything's
floor...
switched on.
Yeah. So does that suffice? Is that good enough?
No, I would say do your 3 times 10 squeezes, complete relaxing in between each one, 3 times 10 second hold, complete relaxing with each.
Do you know, I have to say,
between each one.
Because we're going to talk about incontinence, aren't we, as well?
Yes.
And I just know from my personal experience, maybe you can weigh in on this. Before I started practicing yoga, if I went like to a gym or whatever and I would jump on the trampoline.
Yeah. You'd wet yourself.
A little bit would come out every time I jumped.
Yeah.
And now I've been practicing yoga. If I go to a gym now and jump on the trampoline,
Then
it's
it doesn't.
fine.
Yeah.
But I've never like consciously made an effort to strengthen my pelvic floor.
But you're probably doing more than you did before.
Yeah. But it's just through my yoga practice, I think, that I have actually strengthened it. Yeah.
You're doing more than you did before. That's why you're stronger.
Yeah.
But as we get older, things get weaker. So and particularly if you are thinking about having kids, it's good to do your pelvic floor exercises so that you know you're strengthening it, you're relaxing it, you've got that good power and also the endurance. And then afterwards, if you have any dysfunctions, you'll have that muscle memory to switch back on.
Even
so that
the mind-body connection.
Absolutely.
To just be like, now I'm squeezing, now I'm not. Because I don't know about you guys. Maybe this is too much information, but sometimes I get a bit confused about what's going on. I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And it's like almost like the signals
yeah.
aren't making their way back up to
and
my
also
brain.
For me, like spiritually, having a connection to your pelvis, as particularly as a female, like it's where all life begins.
Root chakra.
Yeah, we were all made inside a pelvis. We may not have all come out of the vagina, C-sections and stuff, but we were all made there. So having that nice connection between your brain and your core, core not being core muscles, but the core of our being, I think is a really, really healthy way to live.
Yeah.
And if you guys are already doing yoga, you've got that kind of maybe that spiritual kind of side of things. So it might be a nice way just to, bring it into your meditation, your breathing, your pelvic floor exercises. If you're already doing it.
And we talk about in yoga, like that it's an opportunity to really get to know ourselves, get to know our bodies, and the pelvic floor and all of our bits in between our legs is part of us and part of our bodies. Like just because there's maybe certain societal taboos around addressing that and touching it and thinking about it or whatever shouldn't alter the fact that is a part of us, and we need to get to know that area just as much as we would get to know, like our arms or our legs
glutes.
Or whatever.
Everyone's obsessed with their asses.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good obsession to have because we forget about our glutes a lot. But having a kind of spiritual connection to your pelvic, men as well. Like we couldn't have what's growing inside of us without men and their bits in between their legs and their pelvises. So having a really nice connection spiritually is, I think, really, really important.
Thanks for mentioning that. That's really cool. I didn't expect our conversation to go this route, but I'm so happy we did. But on a very different topic, can we talk about queefing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those fanny flappers.
We need to talk about queefing.
Oh, queefing.
Fanny farts.
Yes. What's your experience with queefers?
Well, I will tell you a little story, and I've never shared this to anyone before except for my twin sister. One of the very first times I went to a yoga class, I wasn't expecting it to happen because, I wasn't experienced in yoga. Lifted my leg up in a 3-legged downward facing dog. Air went in. Yeah. And then by the time we get to around through to a camel pose or something, there it comes out. And, you see a few people around you kind of they're being respectful, but they know what happened, and you know that they know what happened, and I didn't go back to yoga for 3 months.
Yeah, do you know what? I had
so
a client exactly the same thing. She had a baby, she kept queefing, the 3-legged dog and handstands, and then stopped going to yoga. I'm slapping in front of the microphone, it's probably going to be...
Oh no!
Oh. Do you want to repeat what you said?
Yes. Slap, slap, slap. So yeah, 3-legged dog handstands with a lady who had... how old was her baby? He was quite old, he was 4. But it's actually more external than internal. It's completely normal as well. And it happens, I can spontaneously do it.
Yeah,
I think we were talking about this earlier.
It's a little party trick.
Yeah, it's my favourite thing.
Go into a handstand, relax everything.
Yeah,
and then,
suck the air in and queef it out.
But the thing that I thought about that kind of got got me to go back to yoga. I thought, there's a word for it. It's, queefing. There's a word for it. Therefore, it must be common, and it's not just me. So whatever, like, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen, and it happens not only in yoga, it happens in sex. It's a completely normal thing. It's just the pressure of the abdominal cavity with the opening of the pelvic floor sucks air in, and then when you engage your tummy, it comes back out again. So it's more an external thing. So it's like your external obliques. You'll probably see like I can't do it here. I can do it in lying. But if you're in three-legged dog and you look at your belly, you might see your big abs poke out like that. And that's just your obliques engaging and your TVA not switching on. So all you need to do is engage your TVA, and that should stop that pelvic floor.
If you're not sure how to engage your TVA, a couple of things that I teach my students which can maybe be helpful. Do you mind if I jump in?
Please do. I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I just tell them, okay, put your hands on the inside of your hip bones to where it's squidgy, and feel your squidgy tummy, and then cough. And then when you feel the muscle jump up underneath your fingertips, that's your TVA. The other thing is then try and sustain that contraction with your fingertips still touching there. So you can't massage your organs anymore, but you can feel that wall of muscle around your belly.
Yeah, and then try it in downward facing dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is there anything else you can share along that?
So lots of cues that I give people is just the feeling of bringing your hip bones together at the front, or that you're doing up like here, doing up a really tight pair of jeans, and you're just pulling that tummy in just so that you can do them up. And also sometimes if you engage your pelvic floor and have a feel, you might feel them engaging together because they are connected. But also don't forget that it's not just down here. Your transverse abs are all the way up here.
And around your
all
back.
the way around here. Well, they connect to the lumbosacral. It's a massive fascia that they connect to around here. But they essentially come all the way around your ribs.
And around your pelvis.
And keep everything inside.
Imagine a big corset, a big girdle, like a corset that you're wrapping around your belly.
Yeah.
And they actually do the same thing. They keep your organs in your body, that TVA.
Yeah, it should be called the corset muscle.
I think it is. In a lot of things, you will hear it being called corset. And the fibres run this way. That's why it feels like they kind of push out. They don't go like your abs go that way.
Okay, cool.
What else are we wanting to talk about?
We want to talk about poo.
Pooping.
Can I just put a little recap in here? If you do queef, you need to turn on your TVA, just in case you missed that.
Yeah.
Because it stops the obliques doing all the work and creating that
Vacuum, essentially, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, pooping.
Pooping.
Let's get on to the peeing and the pooping.
Well, I mean, we've have. Do you have IBS? Yeah, we've all. Well, again, team hypermobility with IBS, but I think we've experienced it in different things, haven't we? In different ways.
Very different.
Because you can have like obviously the constipation side of things.
Too much.
Or going
all
too
day
much.
long.
I have both.
Both fantastic. And so it's really important to, and I've actually, if you go and check out at Sarah Parker Physio, I've been sharing, it's Bowel Cancer Awareness Month this month, if you still post this in April.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be April.
Woohoo.
Or May.
So it's really important to have healthy bowel have healthy bowel habits. So things are moving through you and clearing through you, and then they're coming out well as well. So I mean, eating well, drinking well, fibre.
So eating well.
Yes, fibre.
How would you define that in your opinion?
The other thing is, it depends as well. Everyone's different. If you like with your bowels going too much, if you didn't like fibre, too much fibre is not good. So everybody's different, and this is the same for everything we're talking about. And there's not just one answer for everyone. That's why
you have to experiment.
Yeah, it's one, and also really important to get yourself assessed by someone who knows what they're talking about. So that they can give you a more tailored, because it needs to be tailored to your body because we're all completely different. But just eating, fresh veg, fresh fruit as much as you can, close to how it comes out of the ground. Fiber's really important to get things cleared, and also then drinking enough fluids, water, being aware that things like tea and coffee are can make things move through you a little bit quicker. Yes, Q, water,
so that's why I
great.
stopped drinking teas and coffees.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have herbal tea, but nothing with caffeine because I don't want to go too much.
Yeah.
Because, that's already an issue for me.
And it's also a diuretic as well. So if you're having any bladder issues, also down there in the pelvis, it's a natural diuretic, coffee, tea. So it might make you feel like you need to go to the loo a little bit more. And then having a good position when you're on the loo.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people don't talk about this, and it's so
No,
important.
it's so important. Like, if you think about how things were back in the day when we were cave persons, we would do lots and lots of squatting.
Yeah, we would just squat.
We would
everywhere.
squat. We would squat to eat. We would squat to sit. We wouldn't, I mean, unless you had a rock to sit on. So squatting is also really, really good for getting your bowels moving, but also when you're squatting on the loo, it's the angle of the rectum decreases, so it becomes a straight line. Sorry, it increases, and then it allows for the gravity to help the poo come straight down as opposed to curving. Yeah, so the pelvic floor hooks around the rectum like that, and it stops the poo from just coming out willy-nilly. And then when you actually tilt your pelvis back and go into a squat position, that angle increases there, the pelvic floor relaxes, and then the poo just goes whoop, straight down.
Women used to also give birth in a squat.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't surprise me. They didn't have beds back in the day. They certainly didn't have those leg caliper things.
Yeah.
And actually giving birth in this position is the best position, because when your uterus contracts, it actually contracts forward and down. So if you're in this position, you're being helped by gravity, and then gravity is going to help the baby come out. So
can I just give a little tip going back to squatting to poo?
Yeah.
I just have a couple of cork yoga blocks
Yeah.
that live in my bathroom.
I used them
and
the
I
other
put
day.
them underneath my feet so that when I'm sitting at the toilet,
Yeah.
I'm basically like this.
yeah, perfect.
And
Everyone should have it.
makes
Either
everything
yoga
come out
blocks.
much more satisfactorily.
You can get squatty potties. They're like little kid step things. Or we've got in my loo a 5 kilo Epsom salt bucket,
Tub.
and I just put my feet on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use anything.
Anything,
Like
just get your
box
feet
or
up. Yeah,
whatever.
get your knees up. I call it hashtag let's have a knees up in the loo.
I just squat on the toilet.
Yeah, or just
I
put
just
your
climb
heels
up
on.
on there.
Yeah, and like particularly in public loos when you don't want to touch your bum on the seat,
Oh yeah.
stand on it.
Yeah.
Just lift the loo seat up and stand on the bit that people don't need to sit on. Bob's your uncle.
And out it comes.
As funny as your arm.
Any kind of
What else did
added
we want
bowel or urinary tips for our listeners? Watchers?
Well, I was having for hypermobilers, I was having a look at the research, and there's not really much out there in terms of urinary dysfunction, but it did talk about pelvic floor dysfunctions postnatally, and actually there's not a higher risk of pelvic floor dysfunctions postnatally for hypermobile people, although we do take we do take 3 times as longer to heal with things because of the collagen. Yeah. So if you're thinking about, like, if you have a diastasis, so that's when the 6-pack muscles, to make more room when your baby gets bigger. It's the same with men as well. If you've got a big belly, the only way your abs are going to go once they get to full stretch is this way, and so they open.
So men get it too.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Any time your abdomen is bigger than your abs can stretch, they'll part.
It's just obvious, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then the connective tissue thins. That's the linea alba, and that holds together. And it just thins. And then when you either lose weight or your baby comes out and your tummy goes back to normal again. You have to work really hard to get that tenseness back in that connective tissue between. That can take longer with hypermobile because
we don't got the recoil.
Collagen, yeah.
In our collagen.
So it just needs to have a proper assessment again, and modifying techniques, and also being really aware of heavy lifting after you've had a baby. I don't think there was much that said that incidence of prolapse was higher in hypermobile people. I think one study said it, but then everyone else said there's pelvic floor dysfunctions.
Yeah, I read in an article that it's higher. Prolapse.
Yeah, I think maybe we read the same one then, but then I was reading other things and they said it's not, but maybe there needs to be more research. It would be really interesting to find out.
Just not
Nothing.
enough research right now.
But if you've had your baby and you've got your dram, your pelvic floor is going to be slightly weaker.
Dram is the separation.
Oh yeah, sorry, diastasis rectus abdominis muscle is the dram, where it parts. It doesn't split, it just comes apart. So don't think you've torn your muscles, you haven't, they just come apart. When you're then lifting up your baby and the carry seat, and then all the things you have to take out the door with you for your baby, pressure on your pelvic floor and your abs. So you need to be really, really careful with all of those heavy lifting things postnatally. And yeah, get yourself assessed by a physio. Just so we can modify stuff, because I don't want to say don't do anything. Running would be a thing that we would say don't do. And there was some thing on Instagram. Everything on my feed is just Fanny Physio, and it's about running. About going back to running postnatally at 6 weeks is not good. We should be waiting 3 months.
And 3
Tissue
times
healing.
as long for the hypermobile community, because we take 3 times as long to heal.
Yeah, so that's just something to think about and to actually.
Be careful.
Yeah, so.
You made a baby and you pushed it out. Like, you've got to take care of your body.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Yeah, nobody rehabs after your pelvic floor muscles get stretched 150 times. So no other muscle in the body does that or is expected to do that. And then it's just left. And then second baby.
You have a baby to look after.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, just doing your pelvic floor exercises, you can do them while you breastfeed, you know.
I mean, who else has been doing pelvic floor exercises while this video's been going?
Every time I sell pelvic floor exercises, I squeeze.
Yeah.
So I think the point is that it's very easy to incorporate it into your life, even if you are very, very busy as a mum and you're trying to look after a baby and maybe have a job even on top of all of that.
Yeah.
This is not a big added thing into your routine.
No, I would say go and get assessed, because it's a really important thing to rehab. You know, if you were a runner and you hurt your knee, you definitely go and see a physio and get that sorted, because running's important to you.
But pregnant people don't do this.
No, they don't. And so what happens then is second stage, second baby, really quick, higher incidence of tear, because the baby just comes out because pelvic floor isn't controlling properly, because it's not being rehabbed. It needs rehab. And
it's
also
just like any other injury.
Yeah, and
needs a rehab.
Yeah, and you're having a baby is like running a marathon, and if you don't prepare yourself for a marathon, you're gonna, I don't know,
have bad injuries.
And you know, worse. So I don't know why people don't think that of giving birth.
Because we're not educated, which is why we're doing something like this.
Yay!
We're just not given the education, and also what we're fed a lot, I hear a lot, is that, do you know, women, when they were out in the fields in 610, would just plop a baby out and get back to it. But actually what we don't talk about is how many of those babies died, and how many of the mums died.
We lived in communities where
everyone would
babies
help.
were not raised by a mother alone. Everybody had help as well.
Yeah,
Big
absolutely.
help.
You'd have, like, our community's completely dispersed now, hasn't it? Like, we used to have a township where if a baby was born, it would be taken care of by everyone, and the mum would,
and everyone would pitch in.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot of pressure on the mums, and I think just being mindful that after having a baby, no heavy lifting is one of the things Sarah said. Slowly getting back into exercise.
Yeah.
take your time.
Don't be so hard on yourself, basically. Ask for help. Ask some person, like, hey, can you lift that for me?
Yeah.
And don't feel like you have to look like the supermodels in the magazines that just look like bikini ready 3 weeks after giving birth. And just there's so much bad information out there. And another thing, another type of information that is out there that really annoys me is like 5-step programs, or like just any kind of message that there's like a cure-all for this particular thing that works for everybody, and it just doesn't work like that. Like, we are all different, and there's no magic pill or like template that can be applied to every single person. We all have to figure out like our own individual bodies. And that takes time, and it takes a little bit of effort, but it's so worth it.
Definitely. That's actually, really, really helpful thing there, actually, Adele. Like, everyone's different. You can't just go online and go, right, 5 steps to a stronger pelvic floor or anything else. Everyone's different. That's why it's so important to actually get yourself assessed, to make sure that what you're doing is the right thing and that everything's working in the right way.
And what's really comforting is if now, I was talking to Sarah's colleague about pelvic health physiotherapy, and she was saying just how it's a growing thing in the community, that, there's lots of pelvic health physios springing up all over. So it's not like you've got to travel a really long way to find one near you. Definitely jump on Google, have a little check out. If you're in London, I really recommend checking out Sarah. She's so good.
She's based in London.
London Bridge.
London Bridge. But if you're not in London, then don't worry, because, there are a lot of...
You can come visit.
Yeah. And I know that obviously it's not good to look at, like, if you are somewhere that's very isolated and you are looking at something like 5 steps to improve your pelvic floor, just try it out. Like, you're not going to hurt yourself trying new things, but I think manage your expectations, because obviously this might not be a one pill cures all problems solution. So just try new things, experiment. You might be a bit isolated and you've got like a 6 month ahead of time holiday booked in London where you're going to check in with Sarah, but right now practice doing your 10 lifts that we spoke about. Practice just gently moving and being careful with your body.
And moving is key. Movement is key. Things will switch on as you move. So actually, if you're sedentary as a job, you're quite desk based, moving otherwise outside of that, and every hour,
that chair anymore.
is really, really important to having everything switch on naturally.
Cool. Is there anything else any of us want to ask Sarah before we sign off?
No, I just don't want to sit in a chair anymore.
Working that booty.
Actually, maybe one thing we can finish off with is just talking about men before we sign off, because we've spoken a lot about women.
Well, women are my thing. I definitely want to delve into the male side of things. My amazing colleague already does do men and their pelvic health.
How has she found working with men?
I mean, she doesn't see many. Not many come to her. It's such a massive taboo to come and get your pelvic floor checked. Because obviously it's like having your
cancer,
the prostate checked. So it is an internal exam. But the pelvic floor can be the same in women, and she's seen men with a hyperactive pelvic floor, and then with men you get erectile dysfunction and sexual function issues.
And urinary issues?
Obviously, urinary issues, prostate issues.
I think it's so important for men also to understand that these kinds of things are not, that there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong, but like, it's not like...
They're not alone.
They're not alone, and it's not something to be ashamed of or anything like that. Like, I think the more that people talk about this kind of stuff, the better off we'll all be.
Absolutely.
It was funny, I did my anatomy course either last week or the week before. I lose track of the days. But one girl was saying that she had like a 10-minute argument with one of her students because he was saying that he doesn't have a pelvic floor, only women have pelvic floors. And she's like, get your phone out and look on Google. And he only then was like, oh yeah, I have got a pelvic floor.
You don't have a pelvic floor, like literally your insides would be
Would just
sagging
fall out.
underneath. Like if you're a guy without a pelvic floor, your testicles would be on the floor.
Not a good look.
Not a good look at all. And you know that you have a pelvic floor when you walk into like a really cold sea, like in the water, and you don't want your nuts to touch the water, and you kind of suck everything up and inside. That's your pelvic floor working to lift everything
Cool.
up.
Another advocate for cold therapy.
So yeah, men, be aware of your pelvic floor, because I mean it works to keep your erection, premature ejaculation, urinary dysfunctions, and this happens to a lot of people. I think there's an advert coming out that's actually all across London at the moment, and it's a company that are working with erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen it
The
around.
guy with his hair sticking out.
Yeah, and it goes, oh my,
Yeah.
something, and it's all to do with young men and
It's all over the London too.
yeah. And I was actually talking to a football coach who said there's a lot of young kids with erectile dysfunctions that he works with, and
it's not surprising because so many pelvic floor issues come about because we sit in chairs all day, right? And kids are more and more sitting in chairs.
Yeah.
100%.
Instead of just moving and squatting instead of sitting, and just like we said, moving.
Yeah. So important.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is that it?
I think that's
All
it.
right, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much for listening to us. Sarah, thank you so much for
My
being
pleasure.
here
I
with us.
hope it was helpful.
I'm so lucky because I get to quiz Sarah every day about questions I have in my head. And I suddenly just looked at her and I was like, oh my goodness, other people need to be listening to you because it's so valuable for us to learn about a part of our body we all have. So thank you so much, my love.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, and check me out. I'm Sarah Parker Physio on Instagram.
Yeah, that's where you're going to find her
Yeah.
if you need any more information.
Yeah.
And send her some DMs with questions you've got. And
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.